BRINES is a project which was funded for the energy sandpit, so we're thinking about building risk-informed redundancy for energy systems transitioning to net zero, but there is a bit of a salty water pun here that we're thinking about preservation of climate data sets to be used in infrastructure sectors. So this is an example for an energy system. We also do a lot for transport, rails. So if this kind of thing is interesting to you, but energy isn't your bag, come and talk to me later. So the challenge here, we're going towards net zero, so we're building loads and loads of renewable energy. So we're building wind power, solar power, hydro in some systems, and all of this is really dependent on weather and climate. We're also electrifying our demand a lot. At the moment, like basically all of us have gas heated homes. We've got to get rid of that gas, get everyone onto heat pumps, so our electricity is going to become much more sensitive to variations in temperature, in wind chill, and in the summer if we have high humidity days. So all of that stuff depends on weather, right? So as a climate scientist, you need us. If you do infrastructure system modelling, it's becoming really important to understand how to work in this interdisciplinary way and incorporate climate data. So this is the BRINES team. So we're very interdisciplinary. I'm a climate scientist. I spend my time developing climate data sets to go into infrastructure system models. Sean and Colin, also from Newcastle, they think a lot about energy system resilience. So are different assets, wind turbines, coal gas plants, are they going to get damaged by extreme weather? And Ji-Yuen, who may be here, she's at the conference. So Ji-Yuen works on modelling, mainly transport systems, which is a Python toolkit that we're going to apply to think about energy system redundancy. So very interdisciplinary. I think to do a project like this, like there's not a human that exists that could do it all on their own. It's kind of a very different skill set. So the main thing we're doing, so there's kind of two arms. The first part of the project that we've been working on since May is providing data sets for the DAFNI platform. So energy relevant data about security of supply. So I make multi-decadal synthetic time series of energy demand, wind power, solar power for the UK, but also anywhere in the world we can do. Colin and Sean build these indicators of potential infrastructure damage from extreme weather. So is it getting knocked down by wind gusts? Is it overheating in extreme temperatures? Or is it getting flooded? So we do this with stuff called reanalysis. So these are kind of a meteorologist's best friend. So they're a historical gridded reconstruction of what the weather did in the past based on all our best observations. So radars, quality controlled met masts, it could even be seals with buoys on their head. Anything that's good goes into these reanalysis. So we do this to get a good understanding of the past. And then we also use climate model projections to think about how these weather-dependent variables might change in the future. So a lot of data sets like that are going on the platform. Why is this useful? So there are big technical barriers, and this is the big kind of DAFNI funding thing that we were pushing towards. Climate data is big and unruly. If you've used it, you'll know. The data sets that go into our DAFNI platform, the underlying climate data is about 5 terabytes, and it's all stored on the Jasmine supercomputer. We distill it down into CSV files, which are a few megabytes each, but contain all the important information you could use as a system input. We provide the workflow, so if the exact point in time or space we've picked is not right for you, you can change it for yourself. So if that's interesting, come talk to me about it. But the key thing is we get it into the point where you can put it in the folder in your desktop and run your own model in your own way. So just some examples of what you can do with our data. So I work a lot with UK National Grid and with the Climate Change Committee. So for our energy time series, we think a lot about security of supply. So the main variable I work with is demand net renewables, which is on these plots on the side. So basically, if you take an energy demand, you subtract the wind and the solar and the hydro from it, what you're left with at the moment is all of the gas and coal that you need to burn, all of the carbon intensive stuff that makes everyone very sad. The higher that value is, the worse day you're having. It's expensive for the grid, and it's also very difficult if you're in a highly renewable system, right? So what I've plotted at the top, these are days when we've got very high daily demand net renewables, so greater than the 95th percentile. If we were to fix today's power system and just throw loads and loads of different years of weather at it, so you can see kind of through the year and then through time up the y-axis. So all of our difficult days are in winter, because that's when demand's really high, and these all happen when it's not windy. So the bottom plot is showing what happens if we change the power system setup to get to net zero. So demand's loads higher, because we've got all of these electric cars, we've got heat pumps, got a lot going on. We've got loads and loads more wind turbines, but they're both on the same colour scale, I hope. Yep. We've got dark blues now, right? It's way harder to find energy in the difficult periods in the future, because when it's not windy, right? Just building more wind turbines does not solve that problem. We need some creative solutions like storage, and this is when all the energy system models come in. So this is what you can start to think about with the kind of demand and supply data. The stuff Colin provides allows you to think about assets as well. So we provide time series of variables at the moment in these distribution network zones. So we have gas distribution network at the top and electricity at the bottom. So basically National Grid is the transmission system operator, and underneath this, one of these people will send you emails if there's going to be a power cut. They kind of are the sub people that keep your lights on. So what we can start to do, I've just talked to you about energy system change. You can also start to think about climate change. So here are some indicators for the Scottish and southern region, so that's basically Scotland, and we can think about changing frequencies in extreme weather. So the easiest one to get your head around is the hot spells, right? Because climate change is getting hotter. So we've got 3 different time periods here from the climate model. So a 20-year period, 1980 to 2000, which is the blue line, and we're thinking about return periods. So how often will you get a daily temperature which exceeds these kind of temperature thresholds? So we see by 2060 to 2080, 1 in 50-year temperature here was about 28 degrees. By 2060, that's happening every single year as an extreme temperature, right? Because it is just so much warmer. Windstorms, a little bit less clear cut. You know, in the climate model we've used, maybe windstorms will get worse in the future, maybe they won't. Wet spells, it's getting significantly wetter in the future. But we're getting a reduction in the number of cold spells we have in winter. Key point to note is we still do have very cold days. So there are still challenges where we would be struggling in our currently very high gas dependent network. But again, this is useful if you want to think about asset failures. So in this project, we're writing a report at the moment where we think about, well, what if you've got all these things going on at the same time, right? So a good example of this is Storm Arwen. We had really strong winds in the northeast, so we had asset failures because loads of trees had knocked down pylons, there's snow everywhere, so stuff is just not working. Demand's high because everyone is very, very cold. The day of the storm, it was very, very windy. The following days, we had basically no wind. So we've kind of got the perfect storm for an energy system, particularly one that's highly renewable. So within the project, we're writing a report about how you can use these data sets to provide solutions, be that can we redistribute wind farms to make this a bit more resilient? Can we source energy from Europe? We can look at what the weather's doing there. Can we increase storage and interconnectors? Or, you know, do we need to look to other sectors to be like, can you reduce your demand? Because we're really struggling. So GWIN, who does the redundancy modelling, the other thing you can do with these data sets, if you care about redundancy, is thinking about correlation between locations. So when a lot of energy people do redundancy, they call it the N-1 problem. So if one unit, often your biggest one, so let's say a big nuclear power plant like Sizewell, goes offline, can we still keep the lights on for everyone? And then they run simulations to see if we can do this. So what we're looking at here is the correlation between monthly wind power at various cities across the country. If everything's very correlated, we have the problem that when wind is low, you know, it's low everywhere. When it's high everywhere, and it's really high to balance the system. You can see there's a lot of red here, right? Ideally on this plot we'd see some blue, some anti-correlation to be like, well, it's windy in one place, it's not in another. We can use this to store and balance the system. So this is our first step towards designing our redundancy model around key locations where we might be able to see some benefits. Long term, we're going to use all of the climate data here, put it through some kind of energy system resilience model that GWIN is developing, and put this as a workflow on DAFNI so people can explore how you can use all of these data sets as an input to tell you about probability of system failures. So there's a lot of talk about private data and things this morning. So to create my demand wind and solar models, a lot of it's open, but I do buy private wind power databases. In theory, because we distill it all into a time series and at the end product there's no information about where the assets were, you kind of get a lot of information for free there if you're just prepared to say, oh, we're happy that this is the point in time National Grid think. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to people about that if they're interested in developing some of these models with us. So where are we now? This project started in May. It's running to time. And then I'll leave the summary there for you to read. But yeah, come and talk to us today if you're interested in any of this. So thank you.